back to another CSRM podcast. And whether you're driving in the car, whether you're on the treadmill, you just gone out in this coronavirus atmosphere, you're out walking on the walking track. Ryan, I live on a walking track, and we share a hometown together in Canton, Ohio, and well, that track has been full of people since this quarantine hit us. So we once again say that you may notice that this is a little different format for us because we're not in the studio. We're doing it in a coronavirus technology way, which means you might not get quite the sound of the video quality. Just bear with me. But we're thankful that Ryan Wolfe, who is Accessibility Ministry, is with us. On the last podcast, if you missed it, I want to go back because Ryan helped us understand how to even talk about it, the language, the words, how to relate to people, and to make sure that we're not being offensive to anybody. And we also began to get into one of the specific ways that local churches can do this kind of ministry, engage in this kind of outreach, and that was what we called Challenger Baseball. And Ryan has described for us all that kind of looked like. Up to 15 outfielders, possibly. Everybody bats through every inning, and it's with people that have some sort of a special difference that they have in terms of either a cognitive or physical or maybe even emotional kind of way of approaching this. And one of the things that really caught me, Ron, when you talked about how, if I heard it correctly, that the caregivers of these folks, these players, that they're on duty 24/7, and that if a church can come and give them an hour where they can just sit in the stand and cheer their special person on, and not have to be the coach, not have to be worrying about whatever, that must be a great blessing and service a church can provide. Now, that's not to say that if they wanted to be out on the field, that you would say no, but at least that's a possibility. Talk a little bit about that as well, or more about that.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing. The disability community exists in every community. Every community has, people affected by disability, and a lot of times they're left to take care of each other because the disability community, not always, not everyone in the disability community, but many of them live in a kind of a state of isolation. What we're experiencing right now with the coronavirus being locked in, it's made us feel uncomfortable because we're used to going out doing it whatever we want. For many in the disability community, it's their everyday reality. They live in somewhat of a sense of isolation, cut off from the rest of the community. So in a Challenger Baseball type league, you'll look around, you'll see all of the people that you're used to seeing because they're all people from the disability community. So what was interesting about kind of our story at First Christian Church in Canton, Ohio, where we recruited people to go be coaches in our local Canton Challenger Baseball League, when we showed up to coach, everybody was looking at us like, who are they? We got questions like, do you have a kid in the league? And none of us did, because we were just volunteers from the church. And a lot of people are like, why are you here? Why would you choose to come here? And it created such amazing, open doors for us to be able to say, hey, we're here because we want to be a blessing. We want to coach so you can enjoy the Little League experience, so you can sit in the stands, cheer on your kids. We even had a couple different times where we would recruit people to fill stands, make signs for kids, put their names on the signs. Because if you're going to a typical Little League game or a high school sporting event, the stands are filled and people are holding up signs, people are cheering. If that's not happening at a Challenger Baseball League or a Special Olympics League, it's a great opportunity for the church to show up and just bless the socks off of people by being there to either volunteer or cheer and to give people an experience that maybe they're not typically getting. And if you do that, I can guarantee that you will stand out like a sore thumb, and people will come up to you and ask you questions like, "Why are you here? What are you doing? Why did you choose to come here?" And it's just an awesome opportunity to share the gospel and your love for your community.
You share the gospel just by what you're doing. I've got bumps all over my body hearing you talk about that and see some of that. And I know that I've got a couple of relatives that are even on that autistic spectrum, and to know what that kind of praise or support means to anybody, but to them who so rarely can get that in a public setting. And so I hope people that are tuning into this are catching the heart of this, that you can create your own league for this group of people, or, like you did, you went to serve another existing league. Did I catch that right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. We did not create our own league. We just decided to go to the leagues that are already existed in our community, and that honestly exist in most communities across our great country. Whether it be Challenger Baseball, Americal League, Special Olympics leagues, they're everywhere. And a lot of times, the church doesn't have to try to recreate something. The church can simply be the church, going to these different places that are already there, and serving, and I feel like that sometimes is so much easier than trying to recreate something, to start your own league. Just go be the church. I think Jesus himself said, go and make disciples. He didn't say create this perfect place where people come to you. So he encouraged us to go, and that was just kind of the mantra that we took, as we said, hey, we're going to go where our disability community is, and we're going to be the church, and we're going to bless them, no strings attached, and just see what happens.
Well, God bless you on that, and I hope the people that are listening are really, that they're taking this to heart. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, someone who's had many decades of experience with this, and saying that if the church in general, the church across the spectrum, represented by individual congregations, if we can get hold of this, not taking this whole world store, and we could really, really go live out the gospel in such a way. In our CSRM literature and books and training and all of that, Ryan, we say that we proclaim the gospel by how we live, by how we love, by how we serve. That's how we proclaim it. And that sets it on its ear, because most people think I proclaim it because I've got to talk about it. That's what we call affirmation. Our proclamation is what we do. Our affirmation is our verbal words that explain or further the conversation of what we do. And that's what you're really saying here. Now, give us a little bit more about you. How did you personally get involved in this? What's your history? What's your journey?
Yeah, so for me, before I started kind of reaching out and helping to coach in Challenger Baseball, I was a family pastor at First Christian Church. So I oversaw both children's ministry, student ministry, and special needs ministry was kind of under my umbrella with that. And I had a friend. I love sports. I've played sports all my life. Friend that played sports as well, and he came to me and he said, Ryan, you love baseball, right? I'm like, yeah, I love baseball. And he said you love people with disabilities, right? And I'm like, yeah. He said, well, I got a great opportunity for you. He said, there's a baseball league in our community called Challenger Baseball, and they need coaches. How about you and I go coach? And I looked at him and I'm like, dude, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for, to do what I'm already doing. And so I kind of blew him off, and I'm like, it sounds like a great opportunity, but I don't have time to do that, because I was thinking so much of ministry happens inside the box, inside the box of, the walls of the church on Sunday morning. And I wasn't thinking outside the box. And I'm so thankful that my friend came back about a week later, and he said, "Hey, thought any more about going and coaching with me?" And it was that point, like, God was really convicting me, saying, "Hey, get outside of the box. Church doesn't just happen inside the walls of the church on a Sunday morning. Go be the church." So I'm so glad that I said yes. And myself, my wife, actually my two kids, we all went to coach together, because in the Challenger League, my kids acted as like peers for other kids on the team, and they played alongside them in the field. And believe it or not, my daughter was 1, and my son was 3 when we started. So they were very, very little. But the connection, especially the connection that my 1-year-old daughter Zoe made with another boy on the team, was something that was more beautiful than I'd ever seen before. Because at her age and development, and his age and development, they didn't share many words, many verbal words, but their connection was so unbelievably strong. And this boy, who's on the autism spectrum, wouldn't go to bat unless my daughter was with him. He wouldn't run the bases unless my daughter was with him. A 1-year-old girl. So here you have somebody, the most churches would say is too young to serve, right? Is too young to be involved in ministry. Made baseball possible for this boy who was much older than she was, obviously, at the time. So just the relationships that we built instantly on the baseball field changed my life, changed my family's life, and just completely opened my mind to seeing ministry in a light that I had not seen it before. Just how ministry happens outside of the box, if we're willing to step outside of the box.
And it changed the church to some degree, didn't it? Did it change the DNA of the whole church and have a positive impact?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we continue to recruit other coaches to go with us and build relationships on these other teams, we kept asking a foundational question, how can we be a blessing, no strings attached? So, we continued to build relationships, recruited a few more coaches on different teams, and then we would meet with the leadership of the Challenger Baseball League, and we said, hey, we want to be a blessing. We want to bless the league more than just by providing coaches. What can we do? What can the church do? And we said that with really no expectation of what they would say. And the leader of the league said something to us that was a really big ask that I wasn't ready for. She said, well, Ryan, our league is growing, as are, all little leagues, in our county. We're running out of space. We don't have enough fields to play on. She said, your church is an amazing church. I'm wondering if you would build a field for us on your property and allow us to play there rent-free. And that was not something I ever dreamed would be asked of us. And it was something I didn't give any thought to. Here I am, I'm a family pastor at the time, and I didn't have the authority to say yes. But in that moment, I said yes, because the Holy Spirit was telling me, you're going to make this happen. So I didn't ask permission from the elders or from the leadership team at the church. I just said, yes, we're going to build you a field. And so I went back to the leadership team and said, hey, I really feel like God's leading us to do this. And the leadership team said, you know what? We can commit that space. We had the space at the time. They said, but we don't have any money. And they said, you can build it if you can raise the funds for it. So I took that as a challenge, and took that to the congregation and the community, raised over $50,000, and in less than 12 months had a field on our campus that we dedicated to Challenger baseball, and said, hey, whenever Challenger wants to play, whenever Special Olympics wants to play, they get to fill up the schedule first, and any leftover dates the church can use. And naturally, there's not many leftover dates, but having baseball from Challenger and Special Olympics on our campus every night of the week for like 6 months out of the year. It's about as best as you can get in Northeast Ohio for weather. Changed the heart of our church because our people that were coming to church constantly were seeing these different families on the field. And not only were the families from our church seeing these players on our property, the players from these leagues were seeing the church, and it went both ways. And we had conversations with some different parents in the league, and they said, I'll never forget this. One dad said, I'm not the type of guy that goes to church, but any church that is willing to do this for my child, build a field for them, and let them play on it for free whenever they want to, is a church that I want to be a part of. And he and his entire family were baptized at our church, a couple months later. And it just, people began to come to our church, and our church got more involved, and it was just a two-way street. That was a really beautiful thing that truly changed the heart of our church because we were willing to give up some of our space and resources. That's a good one.
Great story. And again, if you're just joining us, we're in the coronavirus era, and so if you can't quite hear or see just like normal, please bear with us on this, because this message, what we're talking about, is really, really important. And again, in some ways, I'm hoping that Andrew's spinning the dials has got his camera on you, because there's tears in my eyes thinking about just how do we do this for these kind of folks? I mean, it's I'm a grandfather at this point, and to think about my own grandkids, anybody that would do something like that for them, that speaks to me. And I think it speaks also to those who had what you just said, that have concerns about the finances. I'd be willing to bet that if we polled the CSRM churches, that this is an area that probably is the easiest to fundraise for of any of these ministries. If you go and say, I want you to help me build a gym for 45-year-old guys to go out and bludgeon each other on the basketball court, people are going to not think that's as important or worthy of their sacrificial gifts. But when the scripture says, release the leaves, and to do it for these, you're doing it, man. And the church not only changed in the way that you talked about, but can you also verify, I think that your church also have these special folks involved in custodial duties and worship opportunities. And I mean, it's not just Challenger baseball out there using the field for free, right?
Right. That was just kind of chapter one of our journey. And there have been probably 20, 30 chapters since then. But that was really the open door that opened the door for all the different ministry opportunities that came after that. Whether it came to hosting proms for special needs adults, well before Tim Tebow ever came along, whether that meant starting a guardianship program, starting an adult day program for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities, starting an employment program at our church, for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities, and on and on and on. There's so many different kind of phases and chapters to our disability ministry, but when we trace it all back, it all came back to my friend asking me to get outside the box to go coach in a local Challenger baseball league. And the relationship dominoes that happened after that are really unbelievable and can only be credited to God. Yeah.
We're going to pick up on some of those stories and how it impacted the very DNA of the church in our next segment. And if this may be the first time that you've ever been on one of our CSRM podcasts, we often do these in series. And so, again, the last one will give you some specifics on the league and how to think about this and how to talk about it. We've talked a little bit here more about the specifics of running the league and whether you run the league or you go to another league that's already operating and offer to serve. And you've heard a little bit of the story of how this can happen in your church and the spiritual results of it. But we're going to pick up more of those stories and more of that great overall story that Ryan's telling us about it in our next segment. So, tune into that. And also, if there's folks in your church or in your network that would want to get this, the information comes up on the screen about how you can refer this to them. And please, make this go viral, because there's many churches that need to hear this. Brian, thanks for being with us.
You bet.
We'll look forward to our next segment together.